Hello and welcome to another edition of the Board Watch Modder. This time we're going to be building a field watch, a Seiko field watch. So here we can see the case, which was purchased from AliExpress. It's a brush case, 40 mil diameter and sapphire glass, 200 meter resistance. Here are the hands that I've chosen for the build. Here's the dial, which is an SNK807K2. It's a real dial, so it's an original Seiko dial. And of course we've got the NH36 to put inside of the watch. So here we can see the dial, and it's a very nice dial, good quality, because of course it's an original that we're going to be putting in this watch. And you can see it here, it's a nice colour blue. So we're going to be building a field watch that has, an H36 sapphire glass. It's a larger diameter, so it's a bit better for my wrist personally. And we're going to be building a very nice field watch. So the first thing to do is to take off the legs, because the crown on the case is at 3 o'clock and it's at 3.8 on the SNK. So we've got to remove these, and you're going to have to use dial dots, or as I do in this video, I'm actually going to use double-sided tape to basically stick it to the movement so that it's in the correct position. Otherwise what's going to end up happening is the feet is going to be misaligned. Basically, if you put that on with those feet, it's going to be misaligned. So just wiggle these backwards and forwards, and then they'll break off. If they're a bit protruding a bit, then you need to sand them back. So just taking the double-sided tape to stick it on the end there, and what I do is I just snip it off so that it's stuck on, and then you've got to take a pair of tweezers and remove the backing paper from the double-sided tape, so that what you can do is just leave the adhesive part. If there's a little bit sticking over, you could try and cut it off, or I tend to just push it down onto the side of the plastic because it's not really going to affect anything. As long as you make sure that it doesn't go onto the actual date wheel, because that could cause you an issue. Okay, so we're just removing that backing paper there. And this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to repeat this 4 times. So I'm going to put 4 bits of double-sided tape around the case holder, plastic case holder. It's then a case of what you've got to do is you've got to align it. The best thing is to do here is just to make sure that it fits correctly over the hole. It's kind of as even as possible, so you can get it over the hole, and that the date window is aligned. Might take a few goes to get it. The adhesive tape is quite forgiving, so you can sort of jiggle it about once it's in place. It's got a bit of movement. A lot of the time you find that when you put it in the case, it does slightly move, so sometimes you've got to take it back out and go again. But this one aligned pretty well, so it wasn't much of an issue. So now we've got the hands. We're going to take out these hands, have a look at these. Very nice hands, C3 loom. They're blacked out on the end, so I think they'll fit the dial very nicely. I didn't want to go for actually sort of traditionally sort of looking field watch hands, but I also wanted to make sure that these kind of were in the same sort of vein as field watch hands. I think that we've accomplished that there. So we're going to pop on the hour hand. So it's just a case of turning the watch so it clicks over at 12. Once it's done that, then put on the hour hand. Just make sure that you've selected once again the right pusher. Once that's on, I just rotate it round to 6, and then I'm going to put on the minute hand, which I always find a little bit difficult, but on this one it actually went on really simply. So that was a good thing. So you're going to pop on the minute hand, make sure it's aligned. Once again, as I said before, make sure you get the correct pusher, because if you use the wrong pusher, what's going to happen is you're going to bend the hands. So here I'm just popping on the minute hand. So this one's just slightly off, the minute hand's gone slightly off, so I'm just going to push it back a little bit. There's no resistance, so it's just going to push back into place. Then it's just a case of rotating it round, make sure the hands are working, make sure they're not catching, they're not rubbing against each other. As long as they're not rubbing against each other, and they're not going to, it's also a good way to check that they're not going to pop off. Sometimes they're a little bit loose, so you need to rotate it around to make sure it doesn't pop off. And we're just going to make sure that it's aligned, so they line up perfectly at 12. So now it's a case of we're going to have to put on the seconds hand. So the second hand is reasonably tricky sometimes. It's just a case, take your time, make sure you can get it lined up as best you can. As I said before, kind of just take it from the side. If you can try and get to the side and have a look, it might kind of makes it a bit easier. So we're going to make sure that that second hand is on correctly and it's ticking away, as you can see in the film here. And then it's a case of what you've got to do is just rotate the hands round, make sure that nothing is knocking, basically, because if it is knocking you might have to bend the hands up a little bit to make sure that they don't hit. Next step is to remove the crown that came with it in the packaging. So that's the packaging crown, so we're going to remove that, and then what we're going to have to do is start fitting the crown for the stem and crown for the actual build. So I'm just going to remove the case back off of the case. It's one of the ones where you've got to use the ball because it's got that sort of Rolex back to it, so unless you have the actual tool you're going to have to use the ball. But it works perfectly fine, easy to do. Just going to have a quick look at inspection of the case and make sure that it's reasonably clean. Use some Bourgeon to clean it inside, a cloth on the outside, whatever you use to get it sort of cleaned up, because what you don't want to be doing is going backwards and forth sort of cleaning the inside of the dial as you go along. So I'm just using the Bourgeon here to just remove some bits from the inside. Once you're satisfied, just pop the case on top of the watch, and this is the first time we can actually see what it's gonna look like. So I think it looks really good. I think it's got the whole field watch aspect that we were looking for, but also those upgrades that we spoke about earlier. So that's looking good. Okay, so the next thing to do now is we're going to have to just make sure that the movement is seated correctly within the case. This one was a little bit tricky. It was seating, but it was moving around a little bit more than you normally expect. But I don't consider that it's going to be an issue once the case back goes on. So pop the crown onto the stem. We're just going to do a little bit of a test fit to make sure that works already okay. And we're going to pop it in here so that we can actually measure it and cut it and get it ready for finish. First thing to do is to measure the gap between the crown itself, where it's going to touch the case, and the actual bit that it threads onto, the fluted part that it threads onto. Check what that is. So we're going to measure that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to measure the total length of the stem without the crown on it, and then what you're going to do is deduct that difference that you've got. That difference is what you're going to measure, and that difference is what you're going to cut the stem to, and then it should fit perfectly fine. So here you can see just measuring the total length of the stem. Then you're going to set your calipers so to the measurement that you've deducted off of that difference, and then you're going to have to mark and cut the stem. So just marking the stem now, measuring and marking the stem, so it gives you a nice visible line. Use a Sharpie, use a permanent marker, something like that, so then you're going to be able to see easily, so that you can cut it easily. So I'm just going to cut the stem now with my pliers. As I said before, good quality pliers. They're going to cut straight down, they cut cleanly, they don't leave it sort of hanging off, so they're going to cut straight through that. Also, a good thing is if you get good quality stems, they're going to cut easier, they're going to fit easier, they're going to have less issues. So once we've done that, we're just going to test fit that it goes on. And once you test fit it, we're going to just also test fit that it works inside of the case properly, that there's no problems, that it's lined up properly, that it's going in properly, that everything's moving okay, that it screws down fully, there's no issues. Once we've done that, the next step is to stick a dab of Loctite on and then screw it back down. You can see I'm holding the stem by the threads that we're not going to use, so there's no damage to the actual movement if you put that stem back in. Okay, so we're going to pop that stem back in now, and then there'll just be one final check to make sure that it's working before we get on with the putting the case back on, etc. So before you put the case back on, what you want to do is you want to grease your gasket with some silicone grease. This helps the water resistance. It also helps the friction when you screw the case back on. So we're going to grease up that gasket so that it's ready, and then we're going to align it inside of the case. There's a small groove which it goes in. It's, as I've said before, it's pretty simple when the gasket is new. It's only if you're reusing gaskets sometimes they can be a bit tricky, but just pop it in here, line it in, make sure there's no dirt and nastiness on it, because of course that might compromise the water resistance. Then it's a case of put the case back on. As I said, we're going to use this ball because it's got that sort of Rolexy sort of thread on the back of it, so we're going to use a ball to tighten it down. This will tighten it down nice and tight. Once again, it's a case of the gasket doing its job with that silicone grease, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Once it's down and it's gone on nice and tight, and you can't move your fingers, thing like that, it'll be perfectly fine and waterproof. So for the first time, we can now see the completed watch, and I think it looks really nice. I think it's exactly what I wanted. A field watch that was slightly, maybe a bit larger, had the sapphire crystal. So we've got the watch here, and we're just making one final check, and it's absolutely fine. And now it's just a case of putting on the strap. So I purchased a strap from Amazon. It's a canvas strap. I didn't want to put it on a NATO, but I did want to have that canvas look, so I've got a strap that's a bit like a NATO. So it's two bits of nylon put together. It's blue to match the dial. It's a very nice strap. It was a very good price on on Amazon, and feels like reasonably good quality, because some of the other ones you can tell that they're going to pull apart, but this one seemed to be well stitched and double stitched and things like that, so it seems very nice. So we're just going to pop that in. Very simple to pop the strap on. And once we've done that, we've got the reveal, and we can see the finished watch. I think it's come out really, really nice. It's come out exactly as I imagined it, exactly as I wanted it. Obviously, it's come out at a fraction of the cost of a Seiko field watch, so it's come out at a very good price, and it's got that original dial. So because it's got that original dial, it's got that authenticity. It looks absolutely brilliant. So all finished. We're going to have some more Seiko builds coming up in the future, some retro diver ones which I'm looking forward to doing. But back to this watch, it looks great. Here you can see the strap. I think it's absolutely brilliant looking watch. Lovely case. Came out great. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Tune in next time to the Bald Watch Modder. Cheers. Bye.